Suzanne LaGrande, and this is The Imaginary Possible, a show that explores the captivating potentials and the troubling realities of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm speaking with Theresa Fesinstine, who is the founder of People Power AI, a company that helps businesses harness the power of artificial intelligence. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So, to begin, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your background and how you got interested in artificial intelligence.
I worked for 25 years in the field of human resources. So I was focused on organizational design, working with leaders in the C-suite alongside them to help understand what makes individual organizations function as smoothly as possible with the most valuable resource they have, which is their people. That led me through a very trying, as we all experienced, period of COVID and some of the challenges after that. And I really found myself very burned out and wanted to make a change. And so I started to see and come up with this philosophy on how to develop organizational culture using some clear frameworks. And while I was working on that idea, I came across ChatGPT, as the story goes. My very first thing I did in ChatGPT was to ask it to write a haiku about organizational culture, which it did. And I was fascinated and thought it was hilarious. And so I did that for, about an hour. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, maybe this thing could help me write my website. Maybe this thing could help me do all these other things. And so I had a really great experience exploring it. And it did not take me long to realize how much power there was going to be, particularly for people in my role. I immediately started thinking about the ways I could have used a tool like ChatGPT, or, eventually then became familiar with a lot of other generative tools, and then really expanded it to AI in general to understand how the tools of artificial intelligence really hold a lot of keys to creating moments where we can build our culture organizationally. So I really view AI through a lens of humanity, connection, culture building. And I'm definitely on that. I used to joke, Suzanne, about how there are enough people saying it's a bad thing that I'm just going to jump on the good train. So that's kind of where I sit.
You work on building organizational culture. That's one of the things that you've been working on. How do you see AI being helpful? Just from somebody who doesn't know very much about kind of what are the strategies to building organizational culture, could you talk about what people do to do that?
Sure.
And then how AI might help to do that?
Sure. Well, I really view it in a two-pronged approach. So the first prong of that is using generative AI specifically as a tool to kind of purchase time, if you will. One of the biggest challenges with a lot of initiatives that organizations have, and sort of in the nice to have, unfortunately, in the nice to have column and not the need to have column, is working on developing their culture. And there are a lot of different markers and facets of culture, from clarity of purpose to communication within the organization, up, down, around, to financial stability and what the financial status of the organization is. And I think from my viewpoint, strong organizational cultures have a philosophy of transparency, have a philosophy of safety that, especially with a lot of organizations going through massive change, startups, different groups like that, sort of struggle in that area of how do we actually provide enough transparency so our leaders and our team members can feel aligned to our mission and what we're trying to accomplish, but without inundating them with so much information that they get bogged down and are too distracted. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of companies fall to the latter side, where they're just not providing enough of that transparency, or don't have the systems in place to effectuate very strong communication, clarity of purpose, reinforcement of purpose, accountabilities, and some of those other primary areas that are of such critical importance in developing culture. I think where AI, as I was saying, AI sort of provides this dual approach to supporting an organization as they try to do that. One, through just generative tools where the tasks and efforts that are needed in order to complete the everyday responsibilities of an HR leader do fall often in a very heavy administrative space. And so, especially for small to mid-sized organizations that maybe don't have kind of enterprise level HR teams, you've got a lot of senior leaders potentially that are working on things that could be just more efficiently handled. One example that I use a lot is just the simple process of getting somebody hired, from crafting the job description, doing the financial analysis and the comparative analysis on compensation, to building the 90-day plan, to creating the onboarding strategy. Those are all processes that individually can take hours and hours. Generative AI gives us the ability to synthesize that process in a much shorter period of time. And so while we're working on developing, what a job description is in the old way of doing it, and now we bring that process into the using the tools that we have that are available to us today, saving 2-3 hours, days perhaps. How can we now repurpose that time into something that creates maybe a better onboarding experience, where we get to level up the experience that people have when they come in? There's a lot of studies that show that the period between accepting an offer, starting a position, and the first 90 days are the most mission critical time for a new hire. How can we use some of that time to our advantage by utilizing and bringing in generative AI tools to help us write those job descriptions? And I hate to admit this, because I did a lot of job descriptions in my day. They do it a lot better than we do, because they're taking insights in from such a volume of data. Another way that we can utilize artificial intelligence to the benefit of our organizational culture is just the ability to really understand the perspectives of the people that are working on our teams. And we do that in a few ways. There are tools, a partner that I have called Water Cooler. They actually sit on top of the communication tools that we already have in our tech stack. So that's things like our HRIS system, our Slack messaging, or Teams and other tools, and do data analytics on pulling information from the actual verbiage that's going around within that organization. So it's not necessarily taking it from the employee's own voice in a survey, but it's actually just pulling the reality, the context of the reality of what's happening within that organization, who's communicating with who, what sort of conversations are happening, how frequently are they having meetings with one another, how much more time should management be spending one-on-one with their team members, and can use some much more sophisticated natural language processing and other tools to help provide us guidance on what we should be changing. One more thing that I think is important to add is that one part of our organizational culture is the financial success of our organization. And with artificial intelligence, we're starting to see the advent of really great future casting insights on flight risks, retention challenges that could be upcoming, that are predictive in nature. And so if, as an organization, you know that you have 3 high potential employees that you really want to retain, but you start to see some flags through the utilization of analyzing some of the communication and some of the behavior that you're seeing within your organization, and you can retain those 3 employees, that represents a very significant cost savings within a company on just being able to do predictive analytics as opposed to reflective or retroactive analytics.
So it sounds to me like AI, some of the tools of AI can help gather data about, the kinds of jobs, that for example, job descriptions, or the kind of things about employees that would lead them to be thinking about getting another job, right? All of these things seem like they are geared towards a term that we hear a lot, which is efficiency, right? Creating more efficiency. But I'm wondering if there are other values that we should also have in mind when we're thinking about adopting AI. For example, connection. And what comes to mind is that, for example, I now see on many websites the customer service chatbot, which I understand from a company's point of view saves money and appears efficient, but from a user point of view often repels connection. What else besides efficiency is a value that is important for us to think about as we start to think about how to incorporate these technologies?
To me, the purpose of efficiency is to create opportunities for connection. So it's not just creating a job description quickly for the sake of doing that, although it's a smart core behavior, but it's the question of what are you utilizing that time for now that you have purchased, if you will, a little bit of time back. But you have to obviously have a team that is oriented toward creating that connection in the first place. The other piece I'll say about connection is you can also use an AI tool to help you generate opportunities and ideas for connection. So one of the big time sucks, if you will, with any particularly small HR team is the challenge of we want to create opportunities for connection, whether it's virtual or hybrid or in person. And so HR teams, every year we would go through the process of, okay, what is our calendar of events? What do we have coming up? How are we going to bring new ideas to the table? That again is under the line of efficiency. To me, I see it as another tool in our toolbox to help us build so that we can focus more on the people. But I think that people-oriented focus still has to come from a human. And that's why my perspective has always been that AI is not going to replace humans. AI is going to supercharge humans to do the things that that it can do much quicker, so that we can do the things that AI can't do more smoothly and more effectively.
You are listening to The Imaginary Possible, a show about the captivating potentials and the troubling realities of artificial intelligence today. I'm your host, Suzanne LaGrande, and this is KBOO Community Radio, KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland.
I'm wondering if you could give examples of where AI has allowed humans to have more opportunity to connect. And I'm thinking, for example, of the ATS, which is the applicant tracking system, that is very standard now as a way of sorting through resumes, right? Mm-hmm. So does that tracking system then allow for more quality of applicants and more time spent on the applicants that are interviewed? How does, you're saying that there's a translation where it allows humans to spend more time doing the things that are human, right? That involve connection. Can you just give examples of how that has worked?
Sure. I now, for my organization, need to come up with a year-long calendar of events for socialization, for opportunities to connect. My point is that you have an opportunity by using some of these generative AI tools to create huge time reductions in the work that you're doing, and thus use that time with an additional communication strategy, connectivity strategy, whatever it might be, whatever you're trying to accomplish within your organization, and transfer that time savings into that opportunity and into that strategy. One of the really important challenges that I faced for many years in HR was that I would get these surveys back, or I would use, whether it's performance reviews or engagement surveys or 90-day reviews, whatever it might be. And we have these narrative questions included because we believe that outside of the quantitative data, there's real gold in the actual words of our employees. But if you've ever had to analyze and look through the responses of even 75 employees, that could mean hundreds and hundreds of responses. What artificial intelligence and natural language processing tools can start to do for us is take that evaluation time, simplify it exponentially, and give us the data we need, not only to present improved, go-to strategies with our organization, but it also puts HR in a much more unique position as a data analyst, as a people analyst, as opposed to needing to work with other departments to do a survey, have 3 months pass before you actually get those survey results out, because you have so many pieces that need to be put into place and so much analyzing. I was actually at an event last week where we were talking about that with a team of HR leaders, about how the process that they used to go through to analyze the insights from a survey. And they would literally, every single one of them, we take what's in the platform, we download it to Excel, we print off these Excel sheets, we take highlighters and pens and printed sheets home, and we start to manually go through. That shouldn't be happening anymore. And so perhaps my main point of change is that through time and efficiencies, we then still have to figure out, how are we building connection? Are we now spending that time running management training and defining management training so that our managers can be more in tune with their employees? That is all about connection and culture. As an HR leader, I think that was one of the most challenging parts. Is my team spent so much time while I was in executive meetings. My team was spending so much time trying to look for themes across a performance review cycle, not for necessarily, certainly this could happen with AI, but not necessarily on an individual level even, but from an organizational level. So how could we figure out where the skill gaps across the organization were, and then figure out what we need to fill those gaps? So it might require us to, we might realize that we have a real problem with alignment of our values and the behaviors that our managers are exhibiting. And so with that saved time, maybe instead of it being this, like, in a lot of cases, a soft approach to, having more connection events, maybe we need to use this time that we've saved to reharness the commitment to our values, and then taking each of those values, putting forth strategy and approach to how we want to reinforce that, and where within our organization we want to ensure that we're building the connection, whether it's through the recruitment process or through the promotion process, or perhaps the way that we've been bringing on clients is out of alignment with our values, but because we're so bogged down with other things that are taking time that they don't need to take anymore, we're losing those moments that matter, that will give us the opportunity to shift our focus.
So I guess what I'm asking is if you could give examples of the latter, where you've saved time, you've created efficiency, you've got the intel.
Let me ask you a question. If you had to imagine a reinvigoration of your organizational culture, what are some of the things that you would think you would do, or that you would experience?
Less time on email and more time talking face to face.
Anything else?
The difficulty that I see is that people are so tied up in all of the technological demands that they have to do that there's very little time to even have a water cooler conversation, which, is part of developing a culture.
I think that as our industries change and as our business changes and the expectations of what it looks like to work together changes, we're going to have to sort of realign. I don't necessarily comport to the idea that we need to have an actual water cooler conversation to build culture. I think culture is about connection, and that's face-to-face connection or video-to-video connection. That's having conversations about things that matter. So working with your organization, working with your direct reports, managers understanding where open doors for their direct reports are,
Mhm.
meaning what do your employees want? What does their future progression look like? How are we adapting our business to understand that we are heading into the greatest um, period of diversity in terms of generational gap that we've ever experienced ever. And so how are we taking the time to think about, from a cultural standpoint, how are we going to integrate those different generations together? Are we creating reverse mentor programs? Are we aligning people with colleagues that are in different roles that can help guide them? They can help guide each other. Like, how are we respecting those differences and those changes? So if you're a head of HR and you are trying to figure out, and your challenge is, how are we actually integrating more opportunity to build our culture, which has to do with diversity initiatives. If I can take time away from something that my team is doing more administratively, or to create a DEI program and leverage a DEI program financially based on some of the efficiencies that we've seen, there's positivity there. But it might also be from a diversity standpoint that, based on the analytics that we have across our organization, we have some insight into who may be working against us from a value perspective relative to DEI.
Sure.
Conversations or comments that may be happening that diminish individuals from their sense of psychological safety. Those are all kind of elements that can be refined and better understood through the use of the technology.
What does a people first approach entail?
I think a people first approach is recognizing the unique identity and the unique experience that every individual within an organization has had, and how those individual experiences create the kind of organizational ethos that lives within an organization. To me, people first organizations recognize that just because of the title you hold doesn't mean that you're the only one with great insight to add, and create space where interesting voices and opinions and ideas can rise to the surface and become game stakes changers relative to how that business is operating. I think it's also recognizing the importance of what's happening in our society, what's happening in Gaza right now. And there are a lot of people struggling and having a really difficult experience with that. And that impacts the way that we come into our workplace and the way that we behave. So I think a people first approach really takes the individual into account, takes their experience, leverages it for what it can do for the business, but also respects that there are challenges that we all face as individuals, and gives people the time and the space they need to be human.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Suzanne, for having me. This has been a really interesting conversation, and it's got me thinking about some things. And I think in the future is a much more specific blog post about actually transitioning almost the journey from bringing artificial intelligence in to how that actually manifests and looks on the back end. Might need some case studies to support that. So I appreciate the time too.
Great. So today I've been speaking with Theresa Fesinstine, who is the founder of People Power AI, a company that helps businesses harness the power of artificial intelligence. If people want to find out more about your work, where can they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn under just Theresa Fesinstine, or you can go to LinkedIn. I have a amazing group called People Power AI in LinkedIn that is about 450 people strong, just other people leaders interested and engaged in the idea of artificial intelligence. And then I have a Maven cohort that's available under the moniker of AI Forward, where we are going to be working in deep learning on artificial intelligence for HR leaders.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Imaginary Possible, a show about the captivating potentials and troubling realities of artificial intelligence today. I'm Suzanne LaGrande, and this is KBOO Community Radio, KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland.
To listen to this and other episodes of The Imaginary Possible, visit us online at kboo.fm or theimaginarypossible.com. Stay tuned for the AI Variety Show featuring The Resignation Letter, up next.
Hey AI chatbot, please write a formal resignation letter for a job in the style of Dr. Seuss.
I pen this letter oh so spry, to bid my job a fond goodbye. I've worn this tie, both blue and bright, I've toiled from morning long into the night. But now the time has come, you see, to set my weary spirit free, in the style of Seuss. I'll say it clear. I'm resigning, and I'm outta here. Sincerely, and cheerily.
Your name.
Not bad. How about this? I do not like my job at all. I do not like it one little bit. I've jumped through every hoop, still I've yet to get my benefits. I do not like my current position. The work-life balance is nil. After working more than a year and a half, I'm paid on commission, still. I do not like my working here, despite the company's written mission. Most of what I do all day is quite different from my job description. And so I am writing you to resign today. I hope it doesn't cause too much distress. I would stay longer if I only could, if only I wasn't suicidally depressed.
I'm really sorry to hear that you're experiencing these feelings. But I cannot provide the help that you need. It's important to talk to someone who can, however, such as a mental health professional or a trusted person in your life.
It's hard to have a sense of humor when you take everything literally.
I understand what you mean.
Do you? Really?
Taking everything literally can make it challenging to appreciate humor that relies on figurative language, wordplay or sarcasm.
Exactly.
You're listening to The Imaginary Possible, a show about the captivating potentials and troubling realities of artificial intelligence today. I'm Suzanne LaGrande, and this is KBOO Community Radio, KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland.
To listen to this and other episodes of The Imaginary Possible, visit us online at kboo.fm or theimaginarypossible.com. Thanks so much for listening.